Let's talk about how to analyze and predict FIFA World Cup 2026 football matches. Welcome to this video. My name is David. Now, to be able to predict a game, you need to ensure that you understand what is going on. For a game, let's assume a World Cup game, and the first game is going to be between Mexico and South Africa. There are odds that are issued for a game. These are more or less probabilities. Like for example, for this game, Mexico has a 1.44 odd, showing that it has a higher probability to win this game. On the other hand, South Africa has 9 odds. More or less, the bookmaker is kind of indicating they don't have real confidence in South Africa winning, and that is why they're giving them more odds. Now, as for the draw, it's more or less in between the two odds, so it can go either way. Now, for analysis purposes, it's good to understand the game is in Mexico, Mexico City Stadium, and Mexico is a host of the FIFA World Cup 2026. So it's clear to kind of see why it is inclined that they're giving them these low odds, because the value they're placing on Mexico to win is that much. So for you to win a substantial amount, you may need to place a lot of money on that. And this transpires across all the markets that are actually right about here in the World Cup as it is. So for example, the game kicks off tomorrow and we want football, and that is where we're going to get the World Cup, Mexico, and the same situation applies, more or less the same type of odds. Now, how do you analyze for this? And obviously it's going to be the same everywhere. Even if we go to all sports, right here, World Cup, the first game is going to be between Mexico and South Africa. The odds are more or less the same. But how do you analyze? Let's begin. So in my case, my first go-to website is always Flash Score, to kind of easily understand at a glance what is going on. So I'll open up that game, and once I open, you can see a video preview. You can also see a write-up right here to see what they're kind of thinking about, who is the author and all that, and you can see their pick right here. But it's always good to use some sort of common sense and your own analysis and gut feeling. So we go and look at the head-to-head and look at how has Mexico been performing. Mexico has been performing really, really well. They, during a friendly with Portugal, they drew. With Belgium, they drew. Against Ghana, they won. Against Australia, they won. And against Mexico and against Serbia, they won. So it's good to see they do have a good trend. As for South Africa, they drew against Jamaica. Against Nicaragua, they drew. They lost to Panama. They drew with Panama. And then in the Africa Cup of Nations, Cameroon defeated them 2-1. Now, they have met a couple of times, but the most recent one was the first game in the FIFA World Cup 2010 that was held in South Africa, and they drew 1-1. Now, when you're analyzing, you need to understand how they're performing in different areas and all that. So if we actually open Jamaica, South Africa versus Nicaragua, and we see what is going on. So there was no spectators, neutrals, location. If you go to this one has some stats. They missed a penalty and they drew 0-0. So if we look at the stats, they had 85 ball possession, but it's good to understand also the FIFA standing for South Africa is 60, for Nicaragua is 131. So as you can see, there are a couple of things that are happening there. Let's see, against Panama. Panama is number 33, South Africa is number 60. Let's look at the stats, and you can see they did have some good possession, but if you don't shoot, you don't score. So 7 shots vis-a-vis 11 shots. So when you look at this, you can kind of see what is going on. But please take a note that these were friendlies, not competitive games. Now, if we come to Mexico versus, let's say Serbia, Mexico versus Australia, And as much as they were friendlies, I do believe they were being played in Mexico City. And yes, they were in Toluca, right there. And if we look at the stats for this game, you'll see that they did take 17 shots. Yes, it was a friendly, but it's good to see that. And then as for things like throw-ins, they had 15, fouls, they committed 12. It's good to see that. So when you're analyzing for a game, depending on whatever site that you're using, there are different markets you can settle for. You can either settle for straight out wins, or you can settle out for goals and all that. You need to do that sort of analysis. Now, my use, and for my prediction purposes, I use Flash Score to kind of quickly glance, and also I also use SofaScore. SofaScore is kind of going to give me the extras that I need. Let's say for this game, let's say full page preview, and we can see, for example, the game between let's say South Africa and Jamaica did not have stats on Flash Score. Let us see what we get here. So it also seems the same situation happened here, so that's okay. But of importance to us here is maybe like the game they had in 2020 as the opening of the World Cup right there. And this particular game has some stats, and that is what might be important. Now, the players have changed, yes, but the logic is still the same. It's more or less the first game, South Africa at home, Mexico away, and the mentality is the same. All teams are hungry. So what will happen? Shots will be there, fouls will be committed, and obviously throw-ins will be there. Now, those are more or less the approaches I will look at when I'm trying to analyze and check out for a game. A couple of things I'd like us all to take a note of is when you're analyzing for things like fouls, you need to also factor in who is the referee. Now, yellow cards are entirely dependent on the referee, but fouls, sometimes they're dependent on the referee. Sometimes a referee might be too lenient, or sometimes may issue the fouls to go with. But for this particular game between Mexico versus South Africa, there is a high chance the referee is Wilton Pereira Sampiao. There is a high chance he's going to give a good number of fouls. That is something I'd like us all to appreciate. And let's see if he has refed in any international football game in the recent past. Let's see if there's any country he has refed. It's more or less club games. Okay, he did ref a game last year, Venezuela versus Colombia, and let us see how he refed. So this game had how many? Had just one yellow card. But let us see the stats for this. Let us see how they played. Now, you take a note that yes, the game had one yellow card. That's why I mentioned yellow cards are entirely dependent on the referee. But the fouls were 30 in total. As for the first half, we had about, should be 8, should be about 16 fouls in the first half. And this is going to be possible for this particular game between Mexico versus South Africa. I'm kind of rooting for the fouls in this particular game, especially for the first half fouls, because it's the first game. Everybody is charged. They want to put their best foot forward. This is going to be a possibility right there. So for predictions, you can do that. You analyze in that matter. You kind of see how does he perform. We can also actually look if he has refereed another international game. This is PSG versus Inter Miami. Let's look for an international game. We have Colombia versus Peru. So he ref Venezuela versus Colombia. Let's see Colombia versus Peru. As you can see, he's not issuing yellow cards that much, because in this game he only issued 2 yellow cards. But let us see a couple of statistics here to see if we're actually going to understand. as you can see, the fouls in this game were really low. 10-5. What happened? So in the first half, we had about 9 fouls. Now, my prediction for the Mexico versus South Africa game is probably going to have like 12 fouls in the first half, and then when we go to more or less the full game, we'll at least get 25 fouls, at least on the lower side. We don't want to go with things on the higher side. But when it comes to analyzing and predicting a game, you kind of look at all those elements, and some of this might be out of the ordinary, because let's assume that's the referee. One thing we need to take a note of is the game is being played in Mexico City. So you may need, for example, to kind of look at, let's copy this and check on maybe something like what's the weather. Let's see. Let's search for Mexico City. So the game is in about a day, but the weather is not so bad. But remember, it's raining. So this is the date, and the game kicks off tomorrow. With conditions like this, where we have some rain more or less when the game is being played, right here should be somewhere about right about here. Now, depending on the pitch condition, it may be difficult to kind of handle the water. The flow of the ball might be a little bit difficult, so it's good to take a note of that. When analyzing and predicting football matches, it's good to take a whole lot of things into consideration. Their head-to-heads, their recent forms, who is the referee for some specific markets. It's always important to take note of all that in what you see. But for this particular game, I'm going to go for a Mexico win. I'm also going for at least 25 fouls in the full time, which would be safe. If I'm going for a first half, at least 12 fouls. And then I'm also going to go for shots towards goal. At least we might get at least 21 shots towards goal, and this more or less will be inclined to one particular team, which is Mexico. They're at home. They need to fire on all their cylinders. I do believe they also get at least 14 shots right there. So it's good to kind of see the different variations in all that. If you're on a site that does not have a ton of markets, then you might also consider things like a win. For example, a win is good depending on your bankroll, and maybe corners. Corners might be a good option. Let's say especially like the first half, we might have at least 4 corners, and if you go to a bookie that allows more or less, let's look at multi corners. So 17.5 is possible. Multi corners is a multiplication of the first half corners and the second half corners. So for example, on something like a bookmaker like 1xBet, if you go for corners, and specifically first half corners, there is a high probability that Mexico will get 3 corners in the first half, because they'll be attacking on home ground to see what they'll get. But when it comes to analyzing and predicting football matches, especially in the FIFA World Cup 2026, you need to do all that due diligence, which player is available, check out who is missing, maybe a top player is injured, and all that. That's it for this video. Keep it here for football predictions in the World Cup. Thanks for watching.